Hello and welcome. This is Casey, and in today's video we will be discussing the pineal gland. So we will be taking a look at some of the more basic form and function of the pineal gland, as well as its more ethereal, higher dimensional aspect, Ajna chakra, also known as the third eye. In addition, we will be exploring how the science of iridology may be utilized to assess the health of the pineal gland. And with this, we'll be looking not only at the placement of the pineal gland within the iris chart, we'll also consider different iris signs that may indicate different levels of health, such as pigmentation, radii solaris, cloudiness, the acute white and the more chronic and degenerative darker browns and black markings, and what these signs may indicate in terms of hyperactivity, hypoactivity, possible calcification, and the effects or results of fluoride use on this gland. So to get started, let's take a look at some basic anatomy of the brain. And so we can see the pineal gland, we can also see the pituitary, the hypothalamus, and of special importance to the iridologist, we can see the proximity of the optic nerve to these glands and features within the brain. And so we have the pineal gland surrounded by and submersed in cerebral spinal fluid, which is here these fluid-filled spaces. That is what they are referring to. And this crystalline gland develops from the roof of the diencephalon, which is an area or region of the brain. This is the approximate region of the diencephalon, and is located behind the third cerebral ventricle between the two hemispheres in the brain midline, deep within a tiny cave-like structure or cavern in the brain, behind and above the pituitary gland. The pineal gland, conarium, or epiphysis cerebri, is a small endocrine gland within the brain of most vertebrates. The pineal gland produces melatonin, which is a serotonin-derived hormone that modulates sleep patterns in both circadian and seasonal cycles. And then just sort of as a side note, we do also have the substance DMT very much associated with the pineal gland. It is thought to be produced within the pineal gland. We know that the body does produce it naturally. And so the pineal gland's name is derived from its shape, which is similar to that of a pine cone, from the Latin pinea. And in adult humans, it is about 0.8 centimeters or 0.3 inches long and weighs about 0.1 gram or 0.004 ounces, which is, to put it in better perspective, approximately the size and weight of a pea. And of course, the size of the pineal gland does vary throughout one's lifetime depending on one's age and the health of the gland. As we can see through research, quite often the pineal gland becomes calcified, hardened, and shrunken. And I should also note here that the pineal gland, the size of our pineal gland is larger when we are children, and that may be, there are several different things that could be associated with that, but I know for one thing, a lot of people have more psychic awareness and more ability to lucid dream and astral travel when they're children, and it does become smaller as we age. So the pineal gland is activated by light, and it controls the various biorhythms of the body. It works in harmony with the hypothalamus, which directs the body's thirst, hunger, sexual desire, and the biological clock that determines our aging process. In some lower vertebrates, that is certain fish, amphibians, and reptiles, the gland is linked to a light sensing organ. And this is called the parietal eye, the pineal eye, or the third eye. Reconstruction of the biological evolution pattern suggests that the pineal gland was originally a kind of atrophied photoreceptor that developed into an endocrine organ. And I'm just going to end this section here with a quote from Rudolf Steiner, because that is exactly what he put forth in several lectures, and especially one I'm going to read just a quick excerpt. And this lecture was given in 1906. And he says, the pineal gland is the surviving remnant of an organ of great significance in primitive man, an organ of perception which serves simultaneously as antenna, eye, and ear. And this antenna, eye, and ear reminds me of the fact that we'll take a look at the third eye chakra, some of the qualities of the third eye chakra or Ajna chakra are, it's not only clairvoyance, where you can see through higher dimensions, it's also clairaudience, where you can hear through higher dimensions. This organ existed in man during his rudimentary period of development, in days when the semi-fluid, semi-vaporous earth was still united with the moon. And then he also says in 1913, with this, they could not only see bodies, but also souls, and what actually lived within the souls around them. This organ has shrunk to become the so-called pineal gland, now covered over by the roof of the head. However, human beings bear this ancient organ, with which they were able to experience the spiritual worlds around them, as an heirloom today within the soul. All right, so we're now going to go on to a brief overview of Ajna chakra, and then we will get right into some iridology. All right, so we have here the 7 chakras, and we are going to be focusing today, of course, on Ajna chakra. And Ajna chakra is the 6th out of 7 chakras. It is spelled A-J-N-A, and it is translated from Sanskrit to mean to perceive, to know, and to command. And Ajna chakra is located directly between the 2 physical eyes and just above in the forehead area. And you can see by the chart that all of the 7 chakras do hold a different ray or frequency, and that is represented in the color, and they also each have their own note, and they also have their own element, and they're also represented by a different number of petals in the lotus. And you can see in the root chakra, so we have the root chakra and the crown chakra, both are more vertically oriented. So the way that Muladhara works is that the energy comes up through the earth and ascends through the chakra column, and through Sahasrara, or the crown chakra, the energy comes down from the heavens and descends through the chakra column and through the human into the earth. And otherwise, the chakras are more faced in an outward direction. So we have an entry point in the front of the body as well as the back of the body. And we have an interesting thing in Ajna chakra. Its element is that of light, and it's also thought of as the Manas chakra, which means mind. But we see, starting from Muladhara, we have different number of petals in each lotus representing each chakra, and those do have some significance. So we start at the lowest chakra with 4 petals, and then we go up to 6 petals in the sacral, and then 10 in the solar plexus, and then 12, and then 16, and then we mysteriously drop down to 2 petals. And then just above that, in the crown chakra, that is known as the 1,000-petaled lotus. So there are a few thoughts on why Ajna chakra has just 2 petals, and you can see it does somewhat represent an eye in the shape of it. It also is thought to represent more qualities of the pineal gland, and that would be the forces of 2. So we have the Ida and Pingala coming together here, the 2 main nadis in the body, as they both flow up through from the root, and they sort of snake through and spiral around, and then they meet up in the third eye chakra. And so that's another consideration there when we're looking at the 2 petals. So we're seeing this reference to the light and the dark, and again we have night and day, and that is represented in the pineal gland through its production of melatonin. And so we also have the qualities of, let's see, we did talk about darkness and light, night and day, and sleeping and waking, of course. And then we also have the qualities of bliss associated with this chakra. And we did talk about the presence of DMT in the body, and whether or not it may be produced in the pineal gland itself. There are some theories and some research pointing to that. It certainly is produced in the body somewhere. And we can see that natural DMT in the near-death experience. We can see it is present in the out-of-body experience and expanded and elevated states of consciousness. And I will say, from my own personal experience thus far in this life, I do feel like the DMT produced in the body is more potent and pleasant, at least from my perspective, than the DMT that you can ingest through certain hallucinogenic plants. But that's just me so far. And so I do know that that is a very real phenomena. And so we do have these qualities represented here. We also have insight, intuition, astral projection, and lucid dreaming, which are actually 2 different things. So lucid dreaming would be more like when you are aware that you are dreaming, and that would certainly be related to the pineal gland and sacred sight and seeing through the eye that is not visible. So that third eye, you're literally looking through it. And then with astral projection, and that reminds me, there's another thought on these 2 petals, and that they look like wings. And so that would be connected to astral projection, which is the ability to take flight within the spirit and leave one's body. And so a lot of times lucid dreaming and astral projection, a lot of people who do one also do the other, but they are, from my perspective and my experience, 2 separate events that take place. And with astral projection and with these more expanded states of consciousness that occur, I also feel like the crown chakra is very much involved. So there is a light that comes down through the crown chakra, and it hits the pineal gland, and they somehow merge together. And for me, that is the more profound experience, when you have both the crown chakra open as well as the third eye chakra. All right, and then we have the clairs present as an ability connected to this chakra, and the clairs are basically higher dimensional aspects of our senses. So we have clairvoyance, which is divine seeing, and clairaudience, which is divine hearing, or seeing and hearing into higher dimensions. We also have telepathy, and we also have precognition. And so awakening the third eye really does sort of act like a stargate. And some of us, most of us, maybe all of us are born with this capacity. But usually at some point, and that would coincide with the fact that the pineal gland sort of loses its luster as we age, and a lot of times these abilities do as well. But in our adult life, when we are able to awaken that chakra, it is essentially a gateway that leads to inner realms and spaces of higher consciousness. And so we're seeing it also very much as a stargate. And I feel like it is connected to dimensional shifts and timeline shifts as well. So let's see, I think that's about it for this brief summary of that chakra. And now we're going to go on to the iridology portion. So I have a chart here somewhere. And this is essentially, there's a couple of little things that aren't pure Jensen chart in here, but this is essentially a Bernard Jensen chart. And in his chart, we have what is known as the brain zones. And we can see that the brain zones are located in both eyes in the 11 to 1 o'clock region. And as well as the brain zones, we also have the head and brain. And so we have the anatomy of the brain also represented in this area. And then, of course, we're just going to be focusing on the pineal gland today. But he does have a lot of years of research put into mapping out these brain zones and confirming them through thousands and thousands of eyes. And they basically essentially sort of represent the different functions of the areas of the brain that they're located in, but that's a very simplified way of saying it. So I will be doing probably a series of videos on each brain zone. I know I do in several iris readings, I have mentioned the different brain zones and I have spoken to them, but I want to make like a quick video for each one so we have that and it's easy to reference. But for today, we're going to be talking about the pineal gland, and it is located in the right iris at the base of the mental ability brain zone at approximately 1 o'clock and in zone 3. So zone 3 is, so we have the stomach, and then we have the bowels and the colon, and then outside of that we have zone 3 where several of the glands are, and also the heart appears in zone 3. Also you can see the bronchioles and the gallbladder and the pancreas as well. So they are located in zone 3. And in the left iris, we have the pineal gland mirrored, and its location is at approximately 11 o'clock in the left eye, again at the base of the mental ability brain zone. Okay, and then Jensen says about this location, I have placed them here, and this area must be regarded as an approximation. The pineal gland has been regarded for many years as a mystery gland, but researchers now think it produces a hormone needed by the pituitary. And then he goes on to say luteinizing hormone stimulates production of testosterone in men and progesterone and estrogen in women. And yes, we have discussed that it is related to life cycles and the reproductive system. And then he says, and I think this is significant, many in the natural healing arts believe the pineal gland regulates intellectual sophistication of the individual, and its location on my chart reinforces that view. So he's referring to the fact that it is right there snuggled up and within the mental ability brain zone. All right, and as well, he has mentioned just regarding the brain zones in general. He says the iris brain zones encompass the hypothalamus discriminating activities, the cerebral cortex, pituitary, pineal, subtle psychic energies, and spiritual centers. Hyperactivity is recognized by whitening of the area that may be accompanied by headaches or hot head. So we have the classic, we're going to see some pretty classic signs known in iridology reflected also in the brain area. So we have whiteness usually indicating hyperactivity and inflammation, and he's even being more specific and saying you can have a hot head. So depletion is measured by varying shades of darkness in lacunas, radii solaris, pigmentation, lymphatic tophi, and defects. Reflexive fibers and nerve rings also denote irritation. All right, so we're going to be looking at a few different eyes, and we'll see what we see there specifically related to these signs. But before we go on to that, I just want to note that in general, there's going to be certain things that affect the health of the pineal gland. And one of those things is the fact that it is located just outside of the transverse colon. And so we're going to see that the health of the transverse colon, especially in the case of radii solaris, is going to be very much related to the health of the pineal gland. And so as we're looking at these different signs in the eyes and what they may indicate, in this case, for example, we're also going to be able to discover the best way to address any imbalances. So if there's inflammation, we'll be looking at that. And if we see radii solaris emanating from the transverse colon, we're going to know that the digestive system would be one of the main things that you're going to be addressing. All right, and then as well, the pineal gland does receive, unlike most of the brain, the pineal gland, and this is a quote, receives a tremendous amount of blood flow. This is from PubMed. So it gets hit with the blood. According to PubMed, second only to the kidneys. And so due to the capillary system, much of the brain, and this is the so-called blood-brain barrier, much of the brain does not get a lot of circulation, and the pineal gland does. And so that's really relevant when you consider especially the effects of different toxins that we may be ingesting, and especially that of the fluoride chemical. But overall, in general, the health of the blood itself is going to be connected to the health of the pineal gland. And then another thing that I want to say that I have another quote from Jensen about the general health of the brain, and then we'll move on to some eyes. As he says, the genetic inheritance from the parents and the nutrition and lifestyle of the mother affect the quality, quantity, and characteristics of the brain cells, particularly during the prenatal period. And so these are just some factors that we're going to be noting in terms of the health of the pineal gland. We have hereditary factors, we have the health of the blood, and then we have the possible ingestion of certain toxins. And then we have the health of the digestive system, specifically the transverse colon. And then, of course, we can also see varying levels of lymphatic congestion and inflammation in general. All right, so that will do it for an introduction. And let's go ahead and look at some eyes. I think I want to actually start by looking at all of these eyes. These are the ones we're going to be taking a look at. And I just want to give an overview because we're not going to have them all together on the screen here in a minute. And you can see that we have all the different colors represented. And you can see that in some of these eyes, and this is just something that I keep in mind in general in iridology, that there is a great significance in certain areas. For instance, in this true brown eye, there are several markings and there are several features, but the pineal gland does seem to stand out to me. And then as well here in this eye, not a true brown eye, we again have the pineal gland standing out. And of course, again, there are other considerations to be made, especially the discoloration or pigmentation in this iris. And then in this eye, we have several radii solaris, right? And the pineal gland is one of them. And it's just one out of many, right? And in this eye in particular, the pineal gland is not showing up any more so to me than a lot of the radii solaris that are emanating from the digestive system. So it wouldn't be something that would really stand out to me as an iridologist. In this eye, it would. In this eye, it would. And then in this eye, over in here, we have this sort of cloudiness, and that's the pineal area. And then we also have a lot of inflammation and a lot of lymphatic congestion. And so we'll get to that, but this does stand out to me because there are, in every eye, there's always a lot to be seen. But I think the one analogy I might give in this regard to how I look at eyes with iridology is related to like a ski resort, at least in the US. Ski mountains are rated, so the runs are all rated by difficulty, by like the green runs and then the blue and then the black, but they're rated not compared to all of the ski resorts. They're rated based on their own mountain. So you might have one mountain where a green run that supposedly should be easy is actually rather challenging for some people, and it may on another mountain be a blue run. And so when you're looking at iridology, you're really looking at the whole eye, and you're looking at what stands out to you compared to what else is going on in that iris. Okay, so let's see if we can just go through these. It won't be too long. So we have, this is a right eye, and we can see the pineal gland here. See if I can get my pen to work. Okay. And so the way that you're going to find the pineal gland and discover the health of the pineal gland is it's going to be outside of the transverse colon or just the bowel wall itself. In this case, it is the transverse colon. You can see the transverse colon is approximately in this area, and the autonomic nerve wreath is in this area. So we have the pineal gland right here. And it is significant in this iris, and it does extend into that mental ability brain zone. And you can see that it is somewhat of a darker radii solaris, and that it is emanating from the transverse colon, but you can also see that there are markings within the stomach itself. So for this person, I would say that we're looking at more of a chronic, at least, to degenerative state within that pineal gland area, and that it's very much related to the health of the stomach and bowels. And I will mention, I don't think I have yet, that when we discussed all the different qualities of the third eye chakra and the pineal gland, all of the different mystical associations and all of the different physical physiology, if you will, the production of melatonin and other hormones. And from my experience, when you're looking at the pineal gland, you can have a bright white, or you can have a dark brown. And for that person, and I haven't done a ton of study on this, which just takes seeing more eyes and interviewing more people. In my experience, even a dark area in the pineal gland means that that is a focus for that person, and that the spectrum varies. So they may have had mystical experiences as a child, and maybe they even still do as an adult, but it's a focus for that person, and it can appear anywhere they can experience anything on the spectrum at any time, if that makes sense. So just because you see a darkness in the pineal gland doesn't mean that someone's pineal gland is completely calcified and shut down. It just means that that is a focus for that person. And more often than not, it actually is the opposite, and that they have had a lot of activity in that area, and it's a significant experience in their life. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at this iris. And this iris is this is a left eye. And as mentioned, we have several radii solaris emanating from the stomach. So this person's going to be focusing on the stomach and bowels. And a lot of the glands are being affected by radii solaris. She also has some nerve rings, and then this fairly significant radii solaris going through the pineal and into that mental ability brain zone. And so what we're seeing in this eye is more lymphatic congestion and a whole lot of inflammation. You can see the lymphatic tophi here, and also just in the fact that yes, there are bright whites, but there are also more milky whites, and even going into some cream color and yellow, and that would progress, if not addressed, into more tans and browns. Okay, and then this one, we have a true blue eye. This is a left eye, and you can see a stomach halo in this eye. You can see a lot of bright white, indicating some inflammation in the iris, and especially hyperactivity occurring in the head and brain area. And I do know this one, and she has experienced throughout her life many third eye phenomena. She is a dreamer and a seer. So there is an emphasis for her on the pineal gland, and we're seeing this little cloud here on the pineal, and then something also in the pituitary area. And this certainly could be a case of drug deposit in its earlier stages, and that could certainly be the ingestion of fluoride. It could also be related to, and this would just be a theory because I know in her other eye we had a similar color in the uterus area that was related more to birth control. And I have done other videos on that topic, but birth control does tend to show up mostly in the uterus as a sore spot or discoloration, and oftentimes in other areas of the reproductive system as well. But regardless, she does have an active pineal gland, and even though there is some discoloration and a lot of inflammation, it does seem to be fairly healthy. And so for her, I would just recommend the normal course of detoxification, getting the kidneys cleared, addressing the lymphatic system, and with an emphasis on reducing inflammation through what she is ingesting in terms of her diet and her surroundings. All right, and the last eye we have, a right eye, And we can see right away that we do have a lot of chronic lymphatic congestion in the stomach and bowel area. We're also seeing a good amount of toxicity in general in the form of radii solaris, and they are emanating from the pupillary margin. As well, we're seeing significant markings in the form of psora or pigmentation or drug deposits. As well, I'm seeing just in general overall a lot of chronic lymphatic congestion in this iris. And with all that said and all that seen, I still do see this marking here, which is a radii solaris coming from the stomach lining. So you can see the transverse colon here, and then you can see the significant radii solaris beginning here at the stomach, going into the transverse colon, hitting the pineal gland, and then beginning its way, making its way into that mental ability brain zone. All right, so I would say that that would be a significant feature for this person. And I do know that this person has also experienced a good level of certain experiences such as dreams and visions and things like that related to the pineal gland and the third eye. All right, so I am going to sum up with a few words from Dorothy Hall, and I really do enjoy her work. And she's actually the only iridologist that I could find specific examples related to the pineal gland that she had written about. And so she says, obviously white signs here mean a highly developed intuitive faculty using an extra sense not assignable to any particular body system. A fascinating example is one of the only real clairvoyants I've seen professionally. His irises both had wide white flares of a peculiar type starting from the nerve wreath and radiating out to the rim of the mental ability zone. He had experienced what he called his, quote, little pictures since childhood, and the accuracy of his future sight was quite uncanny. And she says, white fibers and white flares here usually indicate accuracy of instinctive judgment or good hunches. And that children often show white pineal areas. The fairies and the pixies and invisible companions may really be with them through higher pineal activity. And she sums up by saying, dark pineal signs can sometimes appear after rigid scientific training has produced a person who thinks well but does not know. Many so-called mental illnesses show abnormal pineal areas, both white and dark. And that destructive visions will certainly show as dark signs. All right, so I will clarify that. And so if you see any signs, white or dark, radii solaris or pigmentation, drug deposits, nerve rings, anything like that, it's really indicating a significance of what we've been speaking to today for that person. So both the pineal gland and the third eye chakra. And that the experiences can vary. They can be from one end of the spectrum to another. And so while dark visions will certainly show as dark signs, it doesn't necessarily mean that dark signs will equal dark visions. All right, I hope that you enjoyed this, and I will be back soon with some more information on the pineal gland. I want to cover some of the plants and herbs and foods that are related to detoxing the pineal gland, and we will discuss that very soon. And until then, I hope you all take good care, and I will see you next time. Okay, bye.